Good morning. This is your Rural Reflections Calling Dave podcast, co-hosted by my brother Dave in Carrington, North Dakota, and myself, Grant Nelson, here at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio. Good morning, Dave. How are you doing today?
Well, not too bad. It's a sunny morning with about a 35-mile-an-hour wind again.
And this is day 2 now of the high winds for you, right?
Yeah, you got to carry a tether with you when you go if you stop anywhere.
Small dog or cat advisory. Make sure you have them ballasted plenty heavy. But is it possible that this is going to dry out some of your ground out there, or the industrial strength hair dryer not going to be good enough?
Well, actually, it'll probably dry up some of the stuff we want dried up, but it'll probably affect the young crop, probably more adversely than it does good with drying up the other crop, because most of that land is just waiting now for a little while until it dries more so they can go and start doing some, dig it up for summer or summer fall or whatever before they put cover crop onto it. So,
there's any standing corn still out there?
Oh yeah, there's still some.
We've got everything looking pretty good around here. There was still one combine moving around last weekend. I think they were taking sunflowers. That was up on some higher stuff. I was a little surprised because it was tiled. I thought they might have gone after that first, but maybe the rules don't apply when it's this late in the year for combining anything. I don't know, but that's the last combine I saw moving around was, I guess, probably earlier this past week. So, but everybody's moved on to planting, and actually I've been seeing tracks in the grain fields, so apparently everybody's spraying too. How about out there?
Well, they're getting started. Most of our grain, our small grains are not high enough to spray yet. But there was pre-work still being done. The soybeans were able to be seeded and stay in the program, I believe, until Thursday or Friday. I don't remember what the date was, but so the guys, they were scrambling to get some of that last of their soybeans in. And then there's still some wheat being seeded and stuff here. I don't think anybody's going to seed any corn. I hope nobody's seeding any corn now. Maybe for silage somebody will, but it's getting to the point where they just have to quit.
Quit doing one thing and start doing the next thing. That's kind of what they are going to have to end up doing.
Well, there's people that are starting to, they've already chopped rye for hay, in some of these places around here. That there's several places that chop rye for a hay product, and it's really a good product, I guess. And they got several hundred acres of it that they chop, and they've already done some of that. So
yeah, rye grass, even as it gets older, I mean, it'll eventually get kind of stemmy, but it's slow to get stemmy. It's pretty palatable even as it gets taller and older, just like fescue is, but rye is more common around this area.
Yeah, well, there's several people here that really swear by it, and actually I don't know, you know how rye is. It'll actually grow volunteer also.
Yep.
And so some of them hay it more than once, and I don't know. It's something I never ever realized that anybody would do, but boy, it makes a nice silage.
When I worked for Lloyd Noreen, that's all he ever did up on the ridge was he'd just take whatever got cast over by the combine from the rye field and just dig it in, and that was our planting for the next season, and it actually worked out pretty well. Yesterday, the cattle went out to the big pasture finally. So last night after they ran them through the squeeze chute, while Lisa and I went into town for ice cream, they got them done, and then they turned them loose onto the big pasture. So it'd be interesting to see. I always think summer starts when the cattle go out on the big pasture. When they're just up by the river or in the small paddock, the yard pasture, it doesn't really feel like summer yet, but I kept them up there because they were artificially inseminating the cattle this year. So I put them in for them, and I want them as close as possible. It just works out a lot easier than that. But they're out there now, and I've got some bloat guard blocks out for them so they don't get bloaty off the legumes, which actually, a lot of people got hit pretty hard with winter kill. And there's definitely, the paddocks have had a little bit of a ding on a couple of them there. But the frost seeding I did with clover has definitely come through. It's looking pretty good out there.
Yeah, it's funny, the pastures around here, well, if anything look great, it's pastures, because we got lots of moisture, and there's been cattle out in the pasture. The grass is thick, and it's getting pretty tall even right now. That's the stuff that was actually growing while everything else was waiting to be planted or dug or something.
Now, for our equipment of the week this time around, I think we're gonna go on to manure spreaders. I know that's a hot topic among almost nobody, but it's something that we kind of find interesting. I think we started off. I mean, I think, let's see, we had a John Deere 40 manure spreader way back when, and we had a Minnesota manure spreader. And the John Deere had the big drum on it. The Minneapolis had more like beaters. And they both worked pretty well. But I got a big difference between the two. Of course, the one was made down in Stillwater by inmates at the prison. And the other one was made by John Deere. And we used them winter and summer alike.
Well, that was one of the few things that Dad would ever buy new, would be a manure spreader, because he realized the value of that thing and how, in his operation, the manure spreader didn't go. It ruined everything for the day, because that had to be done or things stopped moving. You remember if we couldn't clean the barn, how if it got a little late, it got to be too much water in the manure and it wouldn't go up the chute, and it was a very important part of the dairy operation, that's for sure.
It really was. I mean, it was good for the soil, but it was also it was so integral to running that dairy barn to keep removing it every day. Well, yeah, keep removing it every day, that it was huge. If that broke, that was a full-on emergency, and the manure spreader had to work. I remember that was the one thing that got kept indoors. I believe that got kept indoors, or else if it was outdoors, Dad would have to chip away at the chain to get it to move again if it got froze up.
Yeah, it wasn't very many nights that that didn't come inside because it was such a pain. It was always froze up. It was outside, and you had to break all the slots loose. The first time you did that and didn't break the slots loose, you had a mechanical issue with it. So, yeah, it was a very important part of the dairy barn, that's for sure.
Nowadays, they've gone to putting, they still spread manure with them, but they spread lime and they spread all kinds of stuff out there. And even in a more metered way, they can spread whatever they're spreading to really benefit the soil based on tests. Yeah,
there's precision drives for many of the big manure spreaders, and you actually control your rate per acre, and there's a lot of places, just like liquid manure, you can only put on so much in an area. So any of these liquid manure spreaders now, they have or the knifers anyway, they have pretty much the same controls on them as a fertilizer spreader would or a sprayer.
And I remember my old side slinger that I bought for $100 that I used to use at home. You really learned quickly not to overload that one, because it turned from being a side slinger to being a pitchfork pitcher from off the top. So I learned to not overload that one too much.
Yeah, I know I've seen them working, and when they start out, they're kind of like, it's just shoveling it out of there basically until it gets some momentum on the chains, and then it throws it out there quite a ways and looks like a pretty good working thing after that.
Yeah, once you get the top part off, it just kind of comes off in some lumps. Then after that, once it really gets going and the chains start extending, it does pretty good work, and it actually spreads it wonderfully over a field. It's nice, even layer, so it works out pretty good. So, you got anything else for us this week, Dave?
No, I guess not. I think we're if you can imagine, we're looking for a little bit of rain here to get some of the stuff that was seeded going, because it was put into mud,
Yeah.
So it's too wet, but we'd like some rain.
Well, we'll hope that you get enough rain to germinate and not enough rain to kill. How about that?
Sounds good.
All right. We'll talk to you next week, Dave.
All right. See you, Grant.
Bye-bye. There he is, my brother Dave. From Carrington, North Dakota, I'm Grant Nelson here at Thief River Falls Radio with Rural Reflections. Colin Dave.